Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is the crossover and I'm back with another video. Today's the first of my scouting reports for the prospects in the 2022 class, and today's video will be about Chet Holmgren, who is the projected #1 pick in next year's draft. So without any further delay, let's get straight into the video. Really quickly, we do have some stats to go over with Chet. He does stand right about 7 feet tall and weighs about 195 pounds, which will be a topic of discussion later on in the video. However, he does have a 7 foot 6 inch wingspan. Which combined with him being 7 foot tall enabled him to dominate his competition, at the high school level, where he did average nearly 21 points, 12 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 4 assists per game in his final year at the high school level. However, during the summer, he did compete with the United States in the U19 FIBA tournament, where he averaged a much more modest, nearly 12 points per game, 6 rebounds, 2.7 blocks, and 3 assists per game. Moving on to Chet's strengths, as a prospect, we have his rim protection. And while it isn't clear whether or not Chet is head and shoulders the best rim protector in this class, as you do have players such as Yannick Njosa overseas or Jalen Duren for Memphis, Chet's rim protection is just something special. His presence around the rim is felt, whether it's small guards who are slashing to the paint and he alters their shot, whether or not it's a block or just getting a hand up and contesting the shot, or it's a player such as Zach Edey for Canada, who is just much bigger than Chet Holmgren. He just has a presence around the paint, and it's felt 24/7. Whether or not he even gets a hand up in the shot, you still always feel like there's a chance that Chet is going to send that shot flying. And moving on, we do have his perimeter switchability, which is very good for a 7-footer. The way Chet is able to move around on the defensive side of the floor and not only protect the paint, but being able to switch out onto the perimeter as well as contest, perimeter shooters is very, very intriguing. I think he projects to be able to guard, probably 2 through 4 at the college level and, maybe 3 through 5 at the NBA level, just due to, he is a bit lofty at times. So maybe I don't see him, maybe contesting, the best of shooters or the best of guards at the college level, and especially not the NBA level, but he does a very serviceable job, especially for a 7-footer. And especially in the FIBA tournament, he did a great job of, contesting perimeter shots. Really, they were more so, spot up shots, but it's still very impressive to see a 7-footer be able to get out there from behind the arc and contest those shots, considering that, a lot of people hated on a player such as Rudy Gobert for not being able to do that. So to see a 19-year-old be able to do that is very impressive. Next up, I have him he's a very aggressive rebounder. Despite how thin he is, Chet gets after it on the boards and he's always fighting. And I was very impressed to see how he competed against teams such as, France with Victor Wembanyama and all the athletes that they had, or a team such as Canada, again, with Zach Edey. And, they had other big physical players, right? They did have Caleb Houston, who is supposed to be a top 10 prospect, in this class. He's very aggressive down there. And you love to see it from a guy who typically 7-footers are much more docile. So to see a guy be as aggressive as Chet is down there, is always a great thing. Moving on, I have his playmaking and ball handling, in the fast break, and that kind of plays into his rebounding, where there was a lot of sequences during the FIBA tournament where Chet would grab a rebound, push it down the floor, show like a flashy behind the back move, and then hit a man that's running with him, which is super impressive. To have a big man who can not only secure the rebound but push the tempo and get something going in the fast break is very impressive. And his vision during in full court is very impressive. You don't really see that from a lot of big men, and he's a great outlet passer, especially in transition. He's able to sling the ball up the floor very well, and it's going to be really fun to see that translate to the college level with Gonzaga and also in the NBA when he does have NBA caliber of athletes with him. It's going to be very impressive to see him just throwing the ball up the court and potentially even getting alley-oops, maybe depending on which team he does get drafted to. Moving on, he is also a very good playmaker in the half court as well. A lot of times where he's operating out of the high post, he had a great 2-man synergy game with Kenneth Lofton, where he always knew where to hit him. Kenneth Lofton is a much bigger player than like your average forward. So typically, you would say to pass it to the big man up high, but due to Kenneth's center of gravity really being in like the middle of his body, and since he was always posting up usually players that were taller than him, especially at when the United States were playing a much higher competition. Chet did a great job of recognizing where to get Kenneth. In those matchups, he always got it to Kenneth, right in his center of gravity, right in his core, where he can just catch it and make a move. And then even when Kenneth did have a mismatch and he did have a smaller guard on him, I always thought Chet did a great job of hitting him with a head pass, which is very impressive, right? For Chet being able to recognize those mismatches and make the appropriate passes, to Kenneth, and in those in-game situations. I definitely see that translating to Gonzaga, where he can have that 1-2 high post low post action game with Drew Timme, which is going to be very, very impressive to see. And he's also just a great playmaker in all facets, right? He had a couple flashes as a passer out in when he was rolling to the basket in pick and roll situations, and due to him just being 7-footed, being able to see over the defense, a lot of times when he was on the perimeter, he did a great job of just slinging the ball across court and finding an open shooter. And he's just a high IQ player, and he just does a great job of keeping the ball moving. He has a good head on his shoulders, so he does know when to attack, when to be aggressive and when to keep the ball moving, which is very, very impressive. He's also a great shooter for a big man, right? He has a great stroke. It's probably one of the biggest positives in his game. He's truly a unicorn in the sense that he's both a great defender as well as a player who can space the floor, and he's much more of a face-up big man, and his shot allows him to be that, right? He catch and shoot opportunities. He was great with those. The percentages weren't awesome from behind the arc, but the form is very smooth. There's no hitch. There's not a single hitch in his shot. It's a very fluent shot. It's a very smooth transition from when he catches it up to the release, and he does a great job of holding his shot after he shoots it as well. So I definitely see his shot translating to not only Gonzaga, but eventually the NBA as well. And he did show some flashes being able to create his own jump shot. There were a couple of times where he would pump fake and defenders would fly by him, and he'd take one dribble and either sidestep or just pull up, which is very, very impressive from a player, again, at that 7-foot size. So again, I definitely see his shot translating to again, not only Gonzaga, where it will be interesting to see, that play alongside Drew Timme, where they are a perfect fit in the sense where Drew Timme is much more of a back to the basket big man, and Chet is much more of a face up big man. So his ability to space the floor and again find Drew Timme on the low post is going to be very impressive to see. Moving on, he does have soft touch around the rim, which is very impressive, right? I do sometimes worry about other players in this class, such as Jalen Duren or again a Yannick Njosa, two guys who I mentioned earlier comparing to Chet. I do worry about their touch at times. But I really don't have that question with Chet. Every time Chet did catch the ball around the basket, he always had very soft touch. He knew just enough power to finish around the basket. I never got the sense that Chet needed to really work on his touch around the basket, which is very good. That combined with his shooting, leads me to believe that he's going to be a very effective scorer again at both the college and the NBA level. And as well as him, he's just a dominant rim roller, right? Again, just due to how tall he is and how long his arms are, he doesn't really have to do much in the jumping department. So once he gets the ball right there, right below the elbow, all he has to do is really take maybe one step and rise up, and really nobody's going to be able to contest that shot. So I do see him being a very effective roll man at both the college and the NBA level again, and his potential face-up game. And while he didn't show anything too flashy. Again, the flashes that he did show in terms of his spot-up shot creation, and as well as the ability to again pump fake and either sidestep or pull up is very impressive. And I can definitely see Chet taking advantage of mismatches in terms of recognizing them, posting them up right around the high post, mid post area, just turning around and shooting. Right, I definitely see that being a part of Chet's arsenal. As he continues to grow and his game continues to evolve. And then finally, his competitiveness is noticeable. Right. Again, typically with 7-footers, they're not the most aggressive of players. So for Chet to be as aggressive and as competitive as he is a great sign. And, that shows that he really cares. And, I think that leads me to believe that he has a great work ethic. And, that's just great in terms of, playing with him, right? When you have a guy as tall and physically gifted as Chet is, and just see how much he cares on the floor, right? That's going to get you going, right? As his teammates, and he's a guy that you'd want to go to battle with, right? So I think Chet is going to be eventually, whether he is or isn't at this point in his career is unknown, but his the competitiveness and his work ethic and his mindset on the court leads me to believe that he is a leader, that for both his high school team and as well as the U19 team, and I believe he will be one for Gonzaga and eventually at the NBA level as well, wherever he does end up getting drafted to. Moving on to some concerns I do have about Chet. First up, I have that he just needs to gain weight, right? Being 195 pounds in a 7 footer is just not going to cut it at the NBA level. For all the slack that people gave Evan Mobley, I think Evan Mobley was definitely more physically imposing than Chet, even though Evan Mobley is still light. Chet is just on a different level of skinny, and I think he just definitely needs to put on weight to maximize his potential, at the NBA level. And the biggest problem with him being as light as he is that he struggles to post up players, right? And being a 7 footer and how gifted he is, how smooth of a stroke he has, and how soft of a touch he does have, right? Not being able to effectively post up players is going to limit his value at the NBA level and potentially relegate him to a role such as Dallas Mavericks Kristaps Porzingis, right? If he can't add weight. And he struggled to post up players such as Caleb Houston, and Caleb Houston is 6'9", 6'10", and while he's definitely is much more swole than Chet Holmgren, he's still probably, I'd say, Caleb Houston's probably right around 210 pounds, 215 pounds, maybe 220 pounds at max, right? It's unacceptable that Chet wasn't able to post him up. There were sequences where Chet would try to seal him off on the low block, and Caleb would just move him all the way out to past the high post. And, that just can't happen at the NBA level. And if that's happening against a guy like Caleb Houston, I can only imagine what would happen against not even 7-footers in the NBA level, just against guys like Tobias Harris or Draymond Green, right? They will have a field day with Chet Holmgren in the post. So he desperately needs to add weight because, again, having a post-up game, given how skilled of a perimeter center that he is, will allow him to take advantage of not only mismatches, but allow him to be a 3-level scorer as a 7-footer, which would again expand his potential. But besides his weight, there's not really too many problems. I do think that he does have a slightly bad habit on defense, where whenever somebody is driving, he tends to put his arm on them, and then he keeps his opposite hand up. Which isn't necessarily a problem, but I could definitely see that being something to worry about at the NBA level, where he will pick up silly fouls with the hand checkings that they do call. At the NBA level, he did get called for that a couple times, not only in high school but especially at the FIBA competition. So I do see that being a slight problem, but again, it's not much of a problem, especially given that the NBA is kind of taking a step back with the whole hand checking rules. But then I do think that he can over dribble at times, right? On offense, there were times where he would catch the ball while it was swinging and just try to do too much with it, and it's like, dude, like, you're 7 foot, as skilled as you are, just make one move and go, right? And there were times where he would try to do a couple dribble moves, and it's like, you don't have to do that, right? Just don't overcomplicate things, right? Just catch the ball and rip and go to the basket, right? And whenever he did that, all it would take him is a rip, one dribble, and it would be at the basket. It would either be a bucket or a foul, right? So for Chet, just simplifying things on offense a little bit, but again, you do still want to enable his creativity on that end of the floor. But again, you do want to. I would like to see him, maybe ease things down a little bit with all the ball handling on the offensive and in the half court situations, and then again, maybe the hand checking, I could see that being a slight problem at the NBA level. And then, of course, he just needs to gain weight. But outside of that, I mean, Chet is such a special prospect, given his defensive prowess, his offensive versatility, given his jump shot, how soft of a touch he has, and just how aggressive he is, that, again, there's not really that many issues with his game outside of, again, the weight, and then maybe, his hand checking could potentially be a problem. And then, maybe he does, try to do too much on the offensive end of the floor at times. But again, he's just just a special prospect that he just has really his weight is really his main problem, and the other two can really be cleaned up. But again, his weight is really his only problem. And then outside of that, I mean, Chet is just such a special prospect again. that I could see him overcoming all of this, and even if he doesn't improve on any of these, I could still see him being a very good college player, and still be a top 3 pick, in next year's NBA draft. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this was the first video in my series where I'm going to be breaking down all the prospects in the upcoming 2022 NBA draft. And my next video is going to be about Paolo Banchero, who is a consensus top 3 player in this class, and who is headed to Duke. So stay on the lookout for that. And besides that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Peace.